All right, we'd like to welcome everybody out to this Wednesday, August 16th, Herriman City Planning Commission, the regular Planning Commission meeting. This time we'll begin with a Pledge of Allegiance. I believe Carrie Self will lead us in that. If you could come forward, please, and lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Carrie. Appreciate that. We do have a full quorum with us tonight. We also have a couple of alternates as well. Appreciate everybody being here. Are there any conflicts of interest with any of the items on today's agenda from any of the voting members? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move into item 4.1. I believe we're going to have a presentation actually on items 4.1 through 4.3 since they're all very similar, and we'll go to that point. All right, it's all yours, Sheldon.
Turn this thing on, please. Okay, so this is a request to remove the PUEs and maintain 2-foot drainage easements for Jackson 4A, Teton, and Teton Village 2, well, phases 2 and phases 4. It's located up here on the north end of the city in the Teton Ranch development. So firstly here's Jackson phase 4A, Teton Village phase 2, and Teton Village phase 4. And the issue we're running into here is that, as you can see, the lots are very narrow. When they're building their homes, their window wells encroach into the PUEs. And this has caused the applicants to actually go through the PUE waiver process to remove those, to get encroachment waivers to install those window wells within those PUEs. Talking with engineering, the PUEs, it's not something that's required by the city. It's just something we add. And just in these situations, it's just adding additional work to the applicants. Every time they submit a building permit, they have to go through that process, contact the utility companies, produce those waivers, and so it just prolongs the process. And what they're asking to do is just to remove the PUEs, but still maintain a 2-foot drainage easement due to the topography of the site to maintain drainage through the developments. Here's the proposed amended plats. Again, you can see they're just removing the PUEs and reducing the drainage easements to 2 feet on the sides and front yards of the properties. Well, sides and rear yards. Apologize on that. Side and rear yards, they're still maintaining the 10-foot PUEs in the fronts. The applicant has worked with all the utility companies. They have actually signed off on the plat saying they're fine with removing the PUEs. Engineering's only concern was that they wanted to make sure drainage could be maintained and provided clear conveyance onto a public right-of-way. And just to wrap it up, staff does recommend approval for all these items, 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3. If you guys have any questions for staff, I'd be more than happy to answer those.
Any questions? Yeah, any questions for Sheldon?
I guess I do have a concern just with the drainage, because that seems like in Herriman we just get these fast-moving storms that come in and dump a lot of water, and there's a lot of issues with flooding. How is this the same if we get rid of these?
So they are maintaining the 2-foot drainage easement, just removing the public utility easement. So they're reducing the easement down to 2 feet. So it would be a 2-foot drainage easement on each side of the property.
Each side, right.
Versus what it is now is 5 feet.
5 feet. And that was the engineering worked with the applicant. That was kind of their recommendation is to go down to 2 feet.
I mean, me personally, in my house, I had to get my garage repoured because there was negative drainage towards my house, and so there's not good, I guess, good topography or drainage in my area, and I have probably like 20 feet between my house and my neighbor's house. So I do have some concern with that. I don't know if we increase the percentage of slope between homes.
See, the issue we run into, even with a 5-foot drainage easement, is when people go in and landscape their rear yards.
Yeah.
they don't take that in consideration. So the issues we run into is people have regraded their backyards to where they're not draining into an easement, they're just draining directly into their neighbors' properties because they're not developing swells on their side yards.
Correct.
So I think a 2-foot swell on each side, if they maintain that, with engineers' recommendations, that they're thinking that that combined 4-foot easement for drainage would be sufficient.
Yeah, especially with the size of lots that I think that are here, these are locations with smaller
Lots
lots.
are usually around 6,000 square feet.
Yeah, so the 2 feet on each side, 4 feet total in that area really should be plenty for capturing the drainage. And it's just on the lot too. Any off-site drainage will be, intercepted by a roadway or thing like that.
And the reality is, because it's so close, even though I completely agree with keeping the drainage,
Yeah.
they still can get a waiver and a variance for it. And so that window well's still encroaching. So in my mind, and I'll be honest, I don't know why we're even reviewing it. This is like staff's awareness, because we never look at drainage easements. That's not our authority, that's the engineering side. So to me, I'm completely comfortable with it. That's why we have staff for that. So
I don't know, Josh,
they could put a window
are you
well
aware
right
of why
now
the 2-foot was what
in the
they
5
decided
foot,
on?
there's
Or?
Yeah, but they have to get a waiver, right?
correct.
I
And
guess,
now we're gonna
I
not
guess
have to worry about
when
the
they get a
waivers.
waiver, is there additional conditions they have to meet to get a
No,
waiver? Or is it
not-
just like, hey, no, we're good, you can
Yeah,
have
so the waiver is going to be held by the city, and they would have to reach out to the city and ask for an encroachment to encroach into that 2-foot drainage easement. And that'd be specifically more for permanent structures. Being that in the city, we don't regulate flat work or landscaping in the rear yards. We don't
Yeah,
monitor that. So it's, like I said, ultimately it comes down to the homeowner to ensure that those easements are maintained and utilized. So if it's 5 or 2, I don't think, honestly, it makes that big of a difference, because in most cases, the homeowners don't maintain
about it
those
anyway.
2-foot easements
Yeah.
anyways.
Yeah.
Which to me, by just making it an official non-waiver function, they'll see it on the plat, it's adhered to. And so whether you want to say they ignored it or not, it's flat out in their face, where a 5-foot waiver, that would be a total different document that they'd have to come back in after they initially submit it for their building occupancy. And 10 years from now, who's going to know to go do that? And so that's why actually showing something on the plat, to me, is more official. Whether people choose to use it or not, or be aware of that, that's a whole different discussion.
And when we were dealing with residents who have those issues with water flowing to their properties, we do make them aware that there is a drainage easement on their property, and they should maintain those and utilize those. And
Well, my understanding of what you're saying is essentially that, the current requirement of 5 feet on either side, and engineering is saying essentially that's overkill. In these situations, 4 feet would be more than sufficient. I'm trying to imagine a rainstorm on a 6,000 square foot lot that's dumping a 4-foot river down the side. I mean, in the situation you're describing, you could have a 40-foot one. If it's not sloped right, it doesn't matter.
yeah, that's my one concern, is just really the grading piece of it.
I don't think
But-
I don't think those are the same
That's kind of a
issues.
different issue.
Yeah. I
think it's a
see your
different issue.
point, but I don't
Yeah.
think there's anything we can do with this
Right.
piece.
Right. And when
It's
and
not
when the
gonna drive
subdivisions
it.
are developed, they do a subdivision, the drainage for the entire subdivision, so that they kind of slope those out.
They
They're
show the
not-
grading on those.
Right, it's not
Yeah,
like
that-
lot per lot per lot, but it
Right.
gives you a general idea of where the water flow is going to go.
Yep.
And historically, correct me if I'm wrong, Sheldon, when they have the problem, it's not once the house is finished, it's once the landscaping's finished. That's when
Right.
people
Or-
forget why why it graded that direction.
Yeah, usually when the house is finished, or if the house is completed and the backyard has not been finished. So there's no native plant material there or lawn to absorb that water, so it just hits the dirt, just
Yeah,
flows
once
out
it's,
and makes a
exactly,
mess.
once it's landscape, things like that, not an issue.
Slope it, right?
Yeah,
As long
not
as
an
it's
issue.
sloped right.
As long as it's
Yeah.
sloped
Yeah.
right, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And the set,
And-
oh, sorry,
go
I was
ahead,
just gonna say real quick, the setbacks aren't affected, so.
Correct, setbacks are still the same, yeah. It's just easy.
It's really the window wells is the issue, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep. Okay, any other questions for Sheldon? Okay, thank you. If the applicant is here, we'll go ahead and let them step forward again. We're talking over the 3 items, so please state your name for the record.
Thomas Spencer. I work for Wright Homes, doing business as Yosemite Park LLC, the applicant. First, thank you for your time to consider these applications. and hopefully I can shed a little light on how this has come about. So this is something new that the cities are starting to require. They're called PUE licenses in Draper, and here I think you're calling them waivers. It's the same stuff. I think they've come about because the dry utilities particularly have been complaining about window wells and AC units, particularly on corner lots, encroaching into the 10-foot PUE. And so to go through that process, it's been a burden on the building department because they have to flag it, and then we have to go get letters for each individual building permit on every lot where we're encroaching in the side yards. Now, just to be clear, our application is only talking about side yards and rear yards on interior lots. On corner lots, we're still maintaining the PUE wrapping around the whole corner. And then there's a couple of other exceptions on Teton Plat 4. So we're trying to eliminate some work both on the building department side and, of course, on our side. To your questions, when these PUE licenses are approved, which they all have been, because none of the utility providers have objected to the encroachments, effectively with the window wells, there's really only about 4.5 feet left anyway, between window well to window well down the side yards. So effectively, it's 4 feet. In our case, and I cannot speak for other developers, we're looking very closely at what we call entire blocks. Do you happen to have your staff report on Jackson 4? I don't have it on. Okay, anyway, if you happen to have the Jackson 4 plat, we've noticed the same issues. We've actually had issues with our own homes, and so we have changed how we're doing things. We're having our engineers look at total blocks, not just one house at a time per lot, but a total block, looking how it's all going to drain in the backyards and where that water can go and get out. In some cases, not in all blocks, if the drainage works naturally well, but in some blocks, and we're already going to start doing this in Jackson Phase 4, we're putting in rear yard drains where we don't think it's going to be sufficient just to have the easements. But that's what we're doing. So again, effectively in the side yards, it's only 4 feet because of the window wells and the AC units. The rear yards aren't really an issue, except in places where we have a rear yard draining into going, back to back, and it's going into another yard, in which case we start looking at yard drains there also very closely. But effectively, the dry utility companies particularly, they haven't objected to any of these, and so effectively it's a 4-foot drainage corridor as is. So we're just trying to make it a little paperwork easier on us, on your staff, because that's the reality of what's going on out there.
Very good, thank you. Any questions for the applicant then? Thank you, Tom.
I want to add one more
yes.
comment, I'm sorry. It's important to note, on the plats, these private drainage easements are for the benefit of the lot owner, the adjacent lot owner, which gives them rights to go next door and make corrections if they have to, and also the HOA. Ultimately, the HOA will have to maintain these and enforce them. So there is a body, there is a recorded entity that has authority to do that.
That's a very good point. Thank you, Tom. All right. Any further discussion on these items?
Yes, I got
ahead,
an
Darryl.
issue here.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you, Sheldon. I understand the need to do all this, okay? And I really don't have any problem with the issues at hand, but it seems that we're reacting to an issue that we created. Herriman's the one that approved the platting. We have our standards that have gone through. We approved the houses that are going on these lots, comboed with the utility companies. We've created a standard for the PUEs. Now we're finding out they're not working because of window wells. Well, they're shown on home plans that went through the permitting process. So again, we're reacting to issues that we created. It's just causing this mess So all I'm suggesting is, I'm okay with the text and the purpose for doing this, but in the future, we better start looking at the sizes of the lots, the homes the developers are trying to put on the lots, even the sizes of the easements. And if we have to work out some new sort of agreement with utility companies, then let's do that too.
All right. We're going to let
Here comes engineering.
we'll let engineering.
Daryl, just to kind of follow up on that question, we are no longer putting those easements on new plats, so.
Carte blanche, you're gonna look at certain areas. and
Yeah,
put
if
them
we
in.
need it, if we need to put say we need to put a storm drain pipe down between a couple houses, we'll get an easement for that. If there's a specific reason to have a easement running between lots, we'll get it.
Is
But
that-
no longer blanket side and rears,
And
we don't.
that's across the board for
That's-
all size lots in
Yep,
subdivisions?
yep, doesn't matter if they're, these smaller lots or if they're, 1 acre lots.
9 times out of 10, they're empty forever.
Yep,
so-
exactly. Yeah, I think it's just been the way we've done business, all along the Wasatch Front for a long time, but.
Time to.
Right. So when the plat was originally approved, it was a requirement. We made that change, and now they're just taking advantage of that rather than seeking
I
individual waivers one by one, so.
agree with the issues.
Yeah.
We just, in the future, we should, and taking away the easements other than those that are specifically needed, that's
we're still-
wise, that makes sense.
Yeah, we're still requiring easements if it's
Right.
adjacent to a roadway, just like I said, on corner lots and things like that, but these side and rear
But I
areas.
think too, you
yeah.
got a building footprint on the plats.
Yeah.
Make sure the houses fit,
Yeah,
Yeah. Good point.
including the window well, which is the problem. Yeah.
including the window wells.
It was through our review process that we were flagging those, right? I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
So,
So I have a question. Do we make separate motions for all of these or one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll have to have a separate motion for each of these then. Tom, I'll let you have one last comment. Come on forward, but yeah, I think we're ready to put this one to bed, but go ahead.
Again, I appreciate it, but I agree with what you said, and I've talked to Jonathan, Blake, Michael about these issues you brought up. As lots get smaller, we're having a tougher time with dry utilities, and especially when our engineers start putting wet utility infrastructure, facilities, structures in the PUEs, and then we can't get through with the gas power. And I don't know, you probably may have already heard stories, there's enough nightmares out there trying to resolve those issues. So I've made it clear to our engineers, no wet utilities of any kind, as far as on the surface structures in the dry utilities. What do people want most these days?
Internet. Yep.
There's got to be a clear path for internet. So I've made it clear that we've got to maintain those PUEs. We don't need them everywhere. We need them where the utility companies need them. And that takes a very collaborative process, which a lot of developers aren't doing, unfortunately. I'm more proactive about it, and so I get the dry utilities involved very early to try and avoid those problems. But yes, you're spot on. You need to look at those things.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. All right.
I'm ready to make a motion to approve item 4.1 with staff's recommendation.
We have a motion by Adam,
I'll second that.
a second by Brody. We'll call for a vote. Brody?
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
Jackson?
yes.
Preston?
Yes.
Darrell?
Yes,
And Andrea?
Yes.
All right, that motion passes. We'll move on and look for a motion on item 4.2.
I'll make a motion on item 4.2 to approve item 4.2 with staff's one recommendation.
We have a motion by Adam,
I'll second.
second by Jackson. Call for a vote. Brody?
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Preston?
Yes.
Darrell?
yes,
Andrea?
Yes.
All right, move on to item 4.3.
I move to approve item 4.3 with staff's one recommendation.
Motion by Adam,
I'll second.
second by Preston. Call for a vote. Andrea?
Yes.
Darrell?
yes.
Preston?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
And Brody?
Yes.
All right, that motion passes as well. Thank you. Tom, you're good. We're going to move on. Go. Yeah.
That it's as proposed on the plats, because I know there's a little bit different wording in the.
I'm not changing my motion, so.
Yeah, I think,
You can work that with staff.
yeah, I think.
We're moving on.
Yep, thank you. We'll move on to item 4.4. Let's see, who has this one? All right, Sheldon again.
All right, this is for a special exception for an accessory structure to reduce the rear yard setbacks. It's located over in the west side of the city in the Sunset Point subdivision. Here's the proposed lot here. It's this corner lot here on the end of this knuckle. Again, you guys are familiar with this. We've seen this back in July 5th, where the commission continued the item because they were looking for additional architectural features on the home and a landscaping plan. Again, as I mentioned, it's in the Sunset Point subdivision, R110. It's just under a half acre. What they're proposing is a 1,300 square foot building, which is about 25 feet to its tallest point. Again, based per ordinance, due to the irregular lot shape, they are permitted to request a reduction of their setbacks due to an irregular lot shape. And based on that, the applicant is asking to reduce the rear yard setback from 6 feet to
From 12 to 6.
From 12 to 6 feet. At the 12 foot, they could hit that 25-foot mark. At the 6 foot, I think they could be at 19. So they're asking for an exception to reduce the setback, in addition to increase the height of the structure as well, which it doesn't exceed what's permitted in the zone. It's just per that setback, they're only allowed to go 16 feet tall, 19 feet tall. Again, so just showing some elevations that were provided by the applicant and just showing, how similar they are to the primary dwelling itself. I can say on behalf of, what I've seen, a lot of what we see for accessory structures, they're usually metal on the side or just, value engineered per se. So, he's obviously providing additional architectural features on this detached structure here. Again, there's your side elevations and just in relation to what the primary structure looks like. Again, you asked for a landscaping plan. So what they're proposing here is doing emerald green trees across the backside at a 6-foot spacing along that south property line. That was another consideration Planning Commission can consider through the review for allowing that additional height. Again, the setback, what they're proposing is a reduction from 12 foot to 6 feet. And again, as they're showing, they are showing that they're providing additional architectural features for this structure. Where the structure is located, it does fit with the typical block face of the neighborhood. Typical location is the rear corner. In efforts to mitigate the impacts on the neighboring properties, staff is recommending that they do some landscape screening along the rear of the structure, which they've provided. And again, another condition would be to obtain PUE waivers so they can construct this permanent structure within a public utility easement. That being said, staff does recommend approval with the following conditions.
Okay.
You guys have any questions for me?
Any questions? We've seen this before, so, okay.
And the applicant is here if you
All right.
have any questions for him as
Great.
well.
The applicant's here, would like to provide any additional information from what's been presented, or if you do, come forward, yeah.
And I briefly mentioned this the last time that I was doing a video call. In reality, there are a lot of things that I took into consideration with the setback. It was not just because of being able to maneuver vehicles there, but it was also because I'm a nice guy and I like my neighbors. One of my neighbors is here. She's the one who's to the adjacent property to the west of us, who actually would be losing that viewing outside of her. It's more of an impact to her than it's going to be anybody else. So, and I've worked really closely with her and her home to make sure that we can, have a nice transition as we go through this. And so, and that's pretty much all I'm going to say. I mean, everything has been presented on the last meeting, and so.
Okay. Could you just state your name quick for the
My name
for the
is
record?
Jeff Clough.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yep,
I knew
thanks.
that, but just for the record.
Yep,
Thank
thanks.
you. Any questions for Jeff?
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here. All right. Any discussion? We've seen it before. We had some concerns. Looks like they've
They
been
addressed
addressed.
what we had
Addressed what we
discussed,
talked
so.
about. So, any other thoughts?
For me, this is more of where we keep seeing irregular lot shape being a lot shape that we see a lot in most subdivisions.
Irregular,
Like,
yeah.
I guess that's one of my concerns is the reason for the change is primarily for the irregular lot shape, which to me is not irregular. I would say this is more of a regular lot shape that we see, but it's taken, we've just seen several that are like this, and the reasons for irregular lot shape, which I
think the
Those irregular-
irregularness of it is the way the home, and, I mean, yeah, we've seen a lot of these, but it is not regular when it comes to the placement of homes and the way you have to.
every cul-de-sac
have to
has
fit
a
on it.
lot like this.
No,
It's not as
exactly.
irregular as you would think, is what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say.
But you recall that we actually defined what is an irregular lot.
Yeah.
And that included lots on cul-de-sacs. So
Yeah.
if you're saying you want to not include lots, that'd be a text amendment. So
Yeah.
we're following the ordinance that
Yeah.
you recommended and the council.
I think it's good. Gives us an opportunity to review it and do the right thing, so.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think it negatively affects the lot where there's no house to the south. So that's my opinion. I think it visually encroaches just due to the height, even though they're putting trees in.
No, agreed, but even if he moved it 6 feet away and you're still going to have a tall building, it's still going to be there. I mean, even if he lowered it, as I was looking at it, right, 24 is less than 25 feet, so the requirement would have been 19 feet there. That's only 5-foot difference. You're still going to have some impact. It's not going to make that much of a difference either.
I think the reasoning for why we would allow for a deviation has been met by doing additional elevation and doing additional vegetation, so.
Yeah,
I don't agree, but that's fine.
yeah. Well, we can always have a motion one way or another, so.
I'll go first, you want me to?
Go for it.
I'd like to approve item 4.4 with staff's 4 recommendations.
Okay, we have a motion by Adam,
A second.
second by Daryl. We'll call for a vote. Andrea?
Yes.
Daryl?
Yes.
Preston?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
And Brody?
No.
That item passes with a 5-1 vote. We will move on to item 4.5. Lauren?
All right, so we're going to be talking about the Mountain Point 104 amendment. So the property is in the south end of the city. This is our closer map. You can see it's part of this retail center. Some background information. The building has an average height of 24 feet and it's on 1.15 acres. The plan is to have 4 units and 1 drive-through restaurant. These are just an example of the elevations that we'll be looking at. So this is the larger building that has 4 structures in it. And then this is the smaller building that will be the drive-through. We recommend approval for this with the following conditions.
So I did have a question, and we don't have a plat that shows that on this presentation, I don't think, that showed the plan view of what's being done here. But the, right between the 2 buildings, there was the smaller one that had the drive-through. Yeah, okay, there it is. Yeah, we can go there. So if you look at the drive-through or the drive aisles between the group of 4 buildings and the single building, your traffic is actually on the opposite side of the road as you're traversing through that. And I recognize the reason for that is, you know, the drive-through on each side. But as you're going between the buildings, there is traffic going the wrong direction that everybody's used to. And I get it, because as you get to the rear of that, it eliminates the conflict point that you would have some crossovers that would be happening as well. But I just want to make sure engineering's okay with this and that situation, you're aware of it and probably reviewed it and maybe even recommended this situation. So I understand why it was probably done, but I just want to make sure everybody thought of that too.
Call that alley London Alley.
London Alley, is that what it's going to be? Diagon Alley, is that what it is? No, what's the, yeah.
There you go.
Okay, I just want to make sure that was thought of. And like I said, I don't have a problem with it. I just, because you could switch it, then you have a conflict point. It's at the back. But
Then your window's on the wrong
But,
side.
Yeah, exactly.
exactly, yeah, depending on where you're at, so. Okay, that was my only question. Any other questions?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you. So if the applicant is here, yes, if you are the applicant, you're more than welcome to come forward and present any additional information for us. And please state your name as well.
Yeah, I am Jenny Tian. I wanted to make a comment. So there is an error. The lot is actually 1.51, not 1.15. Not a big deal, but I just want to clarify that. And then like the point where you were saying like where the traffic is going in and out, I don't know if it shows on the actual graph. We may have a tenant that will be placing a preschool type of business there. So we did have a driveway that's kind of leading to the back. It's a drop-off area. So that's what's showing on the building with the 4 units.
Gotcha.
And then the other one, the drive-through, it's only just for like a drive-through restaurant. So I don't know if that helps with the question.
As long as we can sign it nicely so people aren't going in the wrong way as they,
Yeah,
you know, yeah,
yeah.
great.
Okay.
Any other questions for Jenny?
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. All right, any discussion, any thoughts?
My only thought is, I don't know, maybe they could put raised cement in between those two conflicting.
I think there's
grass
probably some
ingress.
limited width there. I mean, for me, I guess my thoughts are, the traffic there is gonna be small. It's not gonna be a whole lot. An island's gonna start, I think would almost impede the flow of traffic
And they're gonna
Cause
have to
some
live
issues.
with it. This is their business, so.
That's true.
Right? I
They
mean,
can put it in.
Their
the
customers are
problem.
unhappy with it.
if
They'll
it's
put
not
it in if it's a
successful, the
problem.
businesses fail, so I mean, they
yeah.
have to,
Just out of
yeah.
Yeah.
That's some incentive right there in my
Some
mind.
nice big arrows, some signs, and
Out of curiosity, what if you just had where the drive-through is exiting for the restaurant? What if that was also the exit for the 4 and you just flipped the arrows? So it just was an exit-only area.
well, you still need to get the traffic into the backside, go the
Right,
other
no,
direction.
so you enter this side, and so both of these are outs.
What if,
Because if that's only a daycare drop-off, it doesn't matter what side they're on, right?
I hear you, but what if they both wanted to turn right coming out of there? That'd be you
Yeah.
create a
They
problem.
both want to turn right at the same time?
Yeah, you're,
You make a left turn or left and right turn only, yeah.
No, we'll let them work with that. I mean, like we said, we provided suggestions, those are things, but yeah.
Yeah, as
Lauren, go
far as
ahead.
the daycare drop-off goes, having it on the side that it is
It has to be on the driver's side for the drop-off, right? You want
Yeah, so,
this students, well, because your parents right there, keeping them from,
yeah, so we want to try to keep the students from having to cross through any kind of traffic
Yeah.
to get into the building.
Okay, I get it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So if it's still possible through the other way to make that happen or to create large graphics that indicate this is absolutely a pedestrian walkway, then we can look into that. But,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I think most of the issues, they can address them if they come up.
Well, that's just it. We're approving this. They can do what they want with the striping, things like that. That's really not our purview anyway. I just wanted to, from a safety standpoint, wanted to bring that up.
so this is for conditional use.
Mm-hmm.
Do we get a chance to see final plats, landscape plans, all that?
No. I'm
That's a
saying
good
no,
question.
right? Is that,
We can do landscape typically.
Those should have been included in the packet, the landscape plans and everything like that. I think that they were, right?
So they're typically really a
Probably.
preliminary level. What's missing is the construction level detail, which is
Yeah.
usually associated with the building permit on this one, so.
Yeah, remember, this is also in
Okay.
a different area than where we normally would see a little bit more than, this gets into a development agreement requirements, so we're a little more less than
MDA.
what we would typically see.
but yeah, there is a landscape plan that was included, whatnot, in the packet.
I
That was
have
right. Elevation, floor plans, yeah.
a separate thought, just, I don't think this, pretty sure this is not a city issue, it's probably a state regulation. It would be outdoor play area for a daycare. I think the state has some regulations on that, so that might be something to look at. But we can't say anything about it.
Yeah.
Because it's a state. Yeah, as long as it works with state regulations, that was my only thought, is to make sure that that's,
Just giving you a heads up, so, yeah, great.
we as a city don't have anything on that.
One other item or concern for me would just be connectivity with the other developments in there for like walkway in the parking lot.
Yeah, I looked at that as well. I was
There's not really
struggling.
how to put that in there.
Exactly, I was looking at that as well. There is a connection on the south side.
Right, clear down there.
Clear at the
There was
bottom there,
originally a
but,
discussion when we did the master plan for this area that had certain zones with certain walkways at the beginning. So it's not just free-flowing traffic everywhere from pedestrian. And so if you look at the front by I think it's Maradona Drive, there's a sidewalk right there. And so for a pedestrian walkway, we agreed to that there'd be certain zones to actually try and capture that. But again, based off the development agreement, we don't really have that luxury to do some of that stuff.
We can't say anything on that.
yeah.
Yeah, because
Correct me if I'm wrong, staff. I think the ingress and egress is sufficient to capture the big discussion of making sure that 102, 103 has other options to provide access to 104. So I think staff's recommendations capture most of the true requirements.
Had we, Holiday Oil, when it first went in, if we had maybe a pedestrian connection deeper into the site, something we could have connected to with this project, but it's not existent. So we did get the one connection that we.
Which lot, I just can't remember, which lot is the one that's already built, the building that's already built?
102, 103, and then the Holiday Oil, 101.
Gotcha, okay.
$104. Substantial.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Steps. Yeah.
So,
Gotcha.
All right.
so I just can't see how many staff numbers there are, but I'm ready to
Can we
make
go
a
to the
motion.
recommendations quickly on this?
So, I just can't remember if it's 4 or 5, sorry.
Let's see. There we go. Almost there.
There we go.
4.
I move to approve item 4.5 with staff's 4 recommendations.
All right, we got a motion by Adam,
I'll second that.
second by Brody. Call for a vote with Brody.
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Preston?
Yes.
Darrell?
Yes.
Andrea?
Yes.
All right, that motion passes. Okay, we've got a couple of legislative items. Before we go to that, both of these items are up for a public hearing, so I would like to read the public comment policy and procedure. The purpose of public comment is to allow citizens to address items on the agenda. Citizens requesting to address the commission will be asked to complete a written comment form and present it to the deputy city recorder. In general, the chair will allow an individual 3 minutes to address the commission. A spokesperson recognized as representing a group in attendance may be allowed up to 5 minutes. This policy also applies to all public hearings. So with that, we'll move on to item 5.1.
All right, back again. Looking at a neighborhood commercial rezone. So this is in the northern part of the city. So this is our current map. The parcel we're looking at is highlighted in blue. It's currently a residential zone and it's 0.72 acres, and the proposed zone is C1. This is just saying that it does comply with everything that we look for as far as zoning ordinance. It does not have large disruptions to the places around it, and it does meet the needs of the areas that are located directly adjacent. A little bit of background, the applicant is also the owner of the property, and in our community meetings, there were no objections to the change itself or the proposed uses. And our general plan does support the designation as Commercial 1. So in this, we also have exclusions for gas stations and drive-throughs to keep this a local neighborhood service corner instead of a larger area. And the plan is to put a commercial shell that hosts 3 to 4 businesses. And finally, this is our recommendation, is to put a zoning condition to not allow these 5 items, with an exception for window tinting as a conditional use.
Very good. Any questions for Lauren?
I had a question. What does neighborhood commercial mean exactly?
Great question.
Yeah, so neighborhood commercial is our C1 designation, so it's smaller or like locally owned businesses. So we aren't looking at like a large chain grocery store. We're looking at a place that people could potentially move their business to if it's outgrowing their home, or services that are directly working with it or for the neighborhood.
That's awesome. Okay.
Any other questions?
And the applicant is also
Applicant here, great. We'll invite the applicant to come forward. Please state your name for the record and provide any additional information you'd like us to know about.
Hello, my name is Samir Irfan, and I'm the owner of the property. So yeah, she pretty much covered everything. It's gonna be a neighborhood commercial, offering services to the neighborhood people can use. I've actually surprisingly had 1 or 2 neighbors reach out. There's a lady who had a salon in her house. She's like, oh, it'd be great. She found out somehow, and she's like, I would love to get a place in there. So just to give you an idea of what a neighborhood commercial would be, like barbershops, maybe like just small mom and pop businesses. But one thing I do want to discuss is, she said 3 to 4 units. So I was hoping 4 to 6 units. Hopefully that won't change much. I have talked to a few architects, and they said they can squeeze that in.
Okay. Well, that'll come back to us at a later
Yeah,
time. If
right
all
now
this
we're
is
just
approved,
talking
right?
about the zone, right?
Yep,
So-
yep, right now it's zoning. So, yeah. Any questions for applicant on his zoning request, change request? Well, looks great.
Good
Thank you.
location.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
good luck, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so this is open for a public hearing. Nobody's here, but I guess we need to officially, do we need to even open it for a public hearing? I guess we do have to do that.
Online or Facebook too,
Yeah,
right?
all right, we'll go ahead and open this for public hearing if anybody has any comments. And nothing was provided online prior. Okay. All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing.
We have a motion by Adam. We have a second.
I'll second.
Second by Jackson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we'll close the public hearing. Any discussion from Planning Commission on this?
Oh, it's good use.
Rezone,
I think it's
makes
a great
sense.
use.
Yeah,
I just want to say I love it.
yeah,
Yes.
all right. Well-
This is what we want.
Sounds like a motion.
I would like to make a motion to recommend approval of this zoning change, including the conditions put forth of the condition 1. Staff recommendations, yeah.
Great. To city council, yeah,
Yeah.
recommend approval to city.
Recommend approval to city council.
I'll second that.
Sorry, who was second? Adam. All right, we have a motion by Preston and a second by Adam. We'll call for vote with Brody.
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Preston?
Yes.
Daryl?
Yes.
And Andrea?
Yes.
Yes, thank you for being here. Yeah, look forward to seeing the next steps for this. All right, we'll move on to item 5.2, consideration recommendation to amend Title 10, the Herriman City Code to regulate RVs. I'll keep talking until Clinton steps up. No, go ahead.
Try to be faster next time. Okay. So back again, accessory vehicle storage. So this was originally started out as recreational vehicle storage, and then as discussion kind of moved along, it's changed to kind of a larger umbrella to include both recreational and utility vehicles. So we'll kind of go through there. Just giving an idea or purpose of why this ordinance and why right now. There is a large ownership of RVs and recreational vehicles and utility trailers in Herriman. I'm not saying this is a scientific study, but driving around other neighborhoods and driving through Herriman, it does seem like there is a little bit larger number of those types of vehicles in the city. And that is something that the city wants to foster, to continue, to allow residents in the city to own those, to store them on their properties, On the flip side is we wanted to make sure that we maintain a certain aesthetic in the neighborhood, in our neighborhoods, and there have been situations of safety that have come up because of the RV storage currently occurring throughout the city. So the larger purpose of this ordinance is just to create an ordinance that will promote RV ownership, utility trailer ownership in a responsible way that still maintains aesthetics, safety, those kinds of things throughout the city. In regards to general plan, so this is from our new general plan, there is a provision to enhance the public realm throughout the city and create neighborhoods of lasting value and beauty. In these two pictures here, I think that we've all decided that we prefer to live next door to the one above and not next door to the one below here. And not just in terms of aesthetics, but in terms also, you can see on that picture, in terms of safety, it pushes a pedestrian out into the right-of-way, makes a difficult situation there. In terms of zoning compliance consideration, is this in harmony with the existing development, and what adverse effects are we creating with this ordinance? So the overall objectives of the ordinance, and anything in yellow, you can see that has been changed from the previous discussion. I know from the last time this was brought before the commission, there were a few concerns, so anything that's changed, I tried to highlight that in yellow throughout the presentation. But it basically defines what is and what is not an RV. One of the concerns that we've had from our zoning code enforcement, there we go, is how they're treated throughout the city in certain zones. So right now in a residential zone, you can't have these in your front yard, but in an agricultural or in a forest recreational zone, you could have them. So we're just kind of trying to create a continuous ordinance that covers all single-family situations, regardless of which zone that they're in. And then it only allows, this is an accessory use, so nobody could have a residential lot with the primary use being for RV storage. You would have to first have a primary use, which would typically be a home, or if you're in an agricultural property, you could potentially have a barn or something like that that would count as a primary use before you could have an RV storage. It does limit the number of recreational and utility vehicles can be on a lot, and then it also, like I mentioned before, it does address utility trailer storage in addition to RV storage. So it does require screening for these types of vehicles on a residential lot. The regulations and where we store them, how we store them, what is the access looking like? It goes back to them. They do need to be on specified RV pads when they're stored on a lot. They can't just be stored on the dirt there. And then it gives some flexibility in time of compliance for people that currently are not, to give them a year before any type of zoning enforcement kind of kicks in, so they can correct any situations there might be. So looking at how we define an RV, these pictures kind of give an example of what would be considered an RV and what would not be considered an RV. Although that utility trailer in below is not considered an RV, it still is included in the ordinance in terms of where it can be stored and how it can be stored. And it goes towards the number of overall trailers you can have on a property. This kind of gives just an overview of where these can be stored, right? So as we discussed with the commission and with staff, we want these to be behind the front of the home. If in the backyard, then they have to be screened. They have to be on a parking pad. They can have so say this picture below is a corner lot. You can see the RV pad back below would be accessed off of a street in that location. So they can be stored in setbacks as long as they're uncovered. Anything that's covered would have to be outside of a setback, of course. And then these are just give some options for accessing those storage areas. So whether they increase so instead of going over, what we see a lot of right now is people are just going over the curb, which over time that curb is going to fail, which creates another expense for the city to go in and repair. So when they create a larger driveway. We just want them to move that driveway approach all the way down so that that curbing does not get damaged. It makes it probably a lot easier for the person backing the RV, I suspect, as well. But anyways, a couple of options for how they can store them, where they can store them, and the materials for that. Again, screening, the only exception for screening for RV storage or for accessory vehicle storage is when you have topography. So if you have a large lot and you can prove that where you're storing these vehicles on your property is not visible from the street or does not create a detrimental situation for a neighbor, then you could do that. The other one would be as the graphic shows, you can see where the RV is stored on the side of a home. So if it's stored to the side of a home, there's no screening requirement for the front of that RV. It just has to be flush or behind the front of the home. We did discuss occupancy, and these would typically, so we do not allow occupancy of RVs on a residential lot unless someone is building a home. Then they can have an RV on a lot. It has to be neatly maintained. In discussion before, there was a desire to include language to allow connection to temporary utilities and not to permanent utilities. So just as you're making a motion, remember to include that. And then it limits it to 1 year while the home is being built. They'd have to have an active building permit as well. There's other requirements for that to occur. This was probably the biggest change for the ordinance, just in terms of how many RVs or utility trailers you can have on a residential lot. So it just kind of gives a breakdown, 3, 4, and 5 total. So 5 is the most you can have on any residential lot in the city. If you wanted more than that, you'd have to amend the ordinance. So our recommendation, having gone through all that, is we recommend approval to for the city council to consider. If there's any questions, I can address all of that now.
I think it was awesome.
Yep, well done.
I know we've beat this to death, and then I just came up with a question in my head. No, it's just a screening, just a clarification on screening. Wrought iron, just gate, is that considered screening?
No, so screening would have to follow city requirements. It'd have to be a solid fence.
Solid, okay.
Yeah.
That was just a question.
Now, I think there are provisions, seems like there are provisions for like a hedge, a solid landscaping hedge or something like that, but it couldn't just be a wrought iron, something or other. It
has to be solid.
Solid fence, yeah.
And then I just have a question. I'm trying to remember on the FR zone, if we allow RV with no primary residence?
No, I don't think in the FR zone that's a permitted use.
I had a question on like noticing and enforcement where it says the 1 year to comply. So that lot that we saw that had like an excessive amount, would code enforcement, like as soon as this was passed, they could go out and notice, right? Or how would that?
Right, so if they're currently in non-compliance, then the code enforcement will still be able to enforce on those situations. This would be for, say, an agricultural lot that has an RV parked in their front yard. So this will change that, so they could not have that RV parked in the front. They'll have to move it to the back. So in that situation, then, where they don't comply, where they won't comply after the ordinance, but they currently comply, that gives them a year to correct that situation, to provide for compliance in terms of
That other lot is already out of compliance and already?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if they're currently out of compliance, then they'll continue with code enforcement on those.
And another question, with the 1 year, if this were to pass, in 2 weeks, could our code enforcement go out and let people know, hey, just so you know, this just passed, you're gonna have until August, whatever, to get that fixed, 2024, or are they not even gonna touch it until the year?
There probably is that's a good question to bring up. There probably needs to be some kind of public information throughout the city to let them know the change. I mean, with any of these types of ordinances, there has been a public notice sent out to the city to let them, to let people who are interested know. If they're not interested, then they don't get to find out, I guess. But but that would probably there would probably be some opportunities for the city to share that information with the residents through, the farmers market or utility bills. There's a monthly newsletter that goes out.
That's just what I was
that
gonna say. You get a
include-
city newsletter, and a lot of times they list out what ordinances have been changed and whatnot.
But it'd
so
be a
there'll
year from the date that the
the
approval of the
approval of-
ordinance, not if a
Correct.
year from now, then code enforcement went out and said, hey, you need to fix it, and they're like,
Right.
"Well, you now have a year. It's just 1 year from the
1
ordinance.
year
from
from
the
when
date
city
it gets
council
adopted.
Adopts it.
adopts it.
Just want to make sure we're clear.
And I think it's important that we include in that just notice that if it's covered, right, if it's enclosed, then that doesn't count towards
The quantity.
the quantity that's allowed.
Yeah, yep.
I think there's some communication side, but that it's obviously, we got to get to approval by
Yep.
the council before we communicate it. right?
Yeah, and again, well, we'll do a public hearing, and then we can discuss it further. But,
Yeah.
yeah, anything else for Clint on this? Okay, good job. All right, we will open this up for public hearing, for any comment.
So Commissioner Powell?
Yes.
I apologize. We did receive one electronic comment.
Okay.
It was a little unclear to me if this was intended to be public comment, but to be on the
Let's go
safe
ahead and
side,
read
I
it
would like
in
to
and- yeah.
read it into the record.
Please do.
This was submitted by a resident, Kathleen Bybee. She had delivered
Be here
comments
last.
to you at the last meeting in June.
Right. Yes.
She resent those same comments, so just for the record,
Okay.
she still had those comments for your consideration.
Okay.
In addition to that, she had a couple of questions. She says, I have a couple of questions about the recent proposed amendment to Title 10 as recommended by the planning staff. First, am I correct in assuming it would allow 2 motorhomes, 2 fifth-wheelers, and 1 horse trailer on properties of a half acre or more?
Yes.
Second, will there be any effort by code enforcement to prevent the commercial rental of storage spaces for these types of vehicles in residential and agricultural zones? I would like to draw your attention, commissioners, to the considerations against alternative actions, which mention that, quote, many surrounding cities are not as specific with RV storage regulations. My understanding is that other cities don't need strict regulations on RV storage because those cities enforce code violations related to commercial activities in residential zones. Unless the proposed regulation of RV storage is combined with enforcement of current code related to commercial activities, the problem of unsightly RV storage affecting property values will not be adequately mitigated. Thank you for your attention. And again, this is from resident Kathleen Bybee.
Okay, so that is now part of the public comment period. Any other, we haven't seen any other comments come in then prior to this either, right? Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by Adam.
I'll second.
Second by Preston. We'll give it to Preston. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we go ahead and close the public hearing. Very good comments from the from the one. I think we've pretty much addressed those during our discussions and the intent, and now the fact that currently there's requirements for residential properties, but now these will go into effect for other zones as well. I think that'll help. Potentially.
Up to the council.
Up to the council, that's right. If we, yes, correct. Still goes to the council for their final vote.
I honestly think we've done the best we can. We spent a lot of time on this.
Yeah.
I would hate to not say to council, since they do watch these, understand we're not trying to overburden the community. We're definitely trying to do, like Clint highlighted, and trying to allow for good, positive opportunities for both RV owners as well as those that don't have RVs that live next door to them. So I really think this is a good balance, and I think we've definitely done a good due diligence there. So I'm comfortable the way it stands.
The complicated proposed legislation because the commission's interest was really addressing both ends of the issue. On one hand, we wanted to improve enforcement. We wanted to make sure that we were not having excessive RV storage that was creating some kind of negative impact on the community. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, there's an interest in allowing for potentially more recreational vehicles stored on private properties than maybe we would typically see in other communities. And so you're trying to address both ends of that spectrum. And the commission put in a lot of work as well as staff, even to the point where we had an entire work meeting really focused on this one issue. So again, it's an unusual recommendation, but it was very thoughtful. And so we appreciate your work on this.
Yeah, no, as you mentioned, staff's work as well.
I just wanted to address a little bit of the comment we received. Just one aspect of the comment that was discussed in a lot of these meetings was the idea of preventing the commercialization of this or the use of this. And I'll make my opinion known again here of, in that discussion, kind of where I fell on that was, I don't think it matters. Ultimately, if they're complying with the ordinance as we wrote it, does the actual name of the ownership make a difference? It was my opinion, because frankly, if a brother is wanting to use my lot to store his RV, as long as we're within compliance with the ordinance's purpose was to prevent the blight, to prevent the safety issues that came up from it. And so if they're complying with that, I don't really care, on my opinion, of if it was being rented out, so to speak.
As well as that's why we did put the cap,
Right,
the
and the
cap. This is
caps.
more for the council's awareness. I know you guys all know it, but
Yeah.
that's why the cap was referenced, is to try and tie that commercial interest potential and minimize it as much as possible. So still
And-
allowing people to have property rights, to be able to do different ways, to make money in different ways, right? We all are in a different world than we were in the past. And so that's where I don't think we should tie it to commercial. That's why I think we should have the caps. So I really want to make sure council understands that's the purpose of the caps for those different sizes, to try and detract the impacts and detriments to the community if you go above those caps that we set.
And enforcement of ownership is
Correct.
pretty much impossible as
Yeah.
well. That was another issue with that,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, proving that these are commercial entities and not
Yeah.
homeowners. is-
And with most of the areas that I think where some of this context is coming from is well above 5 and that we saw. And so I think that will mitigate a variety of the challenges down to, okay, I think we're within reasonable, and it's definitely not an impact as much as the 30 or so that we've seen on some of these properties. So I do also think we do need to protect even the smaller lots that are seeing this blight and challenges, especially with where people are parking those and the safety impact of where people are choosing to park so they don't have to expend their extra costs for where they would park those RVs. And some of these are bigger than our accessory structures. So that's one of the other reasons why we push this, so.
Two items I wanted to talk about. One, kind of, I guess, two things that gave me pause a little bit. Just a trailer the size of a car, saying that can't be in your driveways, a little difficult, but difficult to regulate from a code enforcement perspective. So I get pushing it behind the fence makes sense to make it uniform. And the other piece of some people have homes that are deep into their lot, and most of their lot is in the front of their home, but we have the ability for them to make an exception for that, so.
Yeah, there's always opportunities for any variance to this, but, there's a process for that if they want to vary from what's being proposed or could be approved. So, yeah, there's always that option.
So with that, I would like to make a motion to recommend the city council approval of item 5.2 with a small alteration to allow for temporary utilities connections when using an RV for a dwelling while they're constructing the lot, and in that case only.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Adam, a second by Preston. We'll call for a vote. Andrea?
Yes.
Daryl?
Yes.
Preston?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
And Brody?
Yes.
All right, that is on for city council approval. All right, any comments from any member of the commission tonight?
Clint and team, great job.
Yeah, thank you
Say
guys.
thank you,
Yep.
Clint.
Yep, very good. All right, future meetings. Sorry, did you have a comment?
I just want to let you know,
Yes.
I'm going to be sending all the commissioners information on the planning fall conference in Ogden. If you're interested in attending,
The APA,
let me know
yeah.
by next Wednesday. Also, we will be having the joint meeting on the 30th this month. So there will be some large issues. I think the commission, we really want to make sure that you have attendance, at least a quorum of our planning commissioners. Do anybody have a conflict with that?
I have a
work meeting
conflict.
on
I
the
probably
30th?
have a conflict.
And Jackson
Two.
has,
I will
Jackson
not be
has
there on the
conflict.
30th.
Yeah,
Jackson, you'll be gone as well. So three
So
of
three?
you are saying you won't be there.
yeah. You'll have a quorum then.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next city council meeting is next week, August 23rd. As just discussed, joint city council planning commission meeting on August 30th. And then we'll be back with a planning commission meeting on September 6th. We'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
That's the easy one. We'll give that one to Daryl. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Beat Adam to the microphone.
Nobody wants to make a motion to adjourn? Come on. He's done enough today. He's caused enough trouble tonight.